Alright, this is part 2 of the Constitution is Not Optional video, and I'm going to go to this Wikipedia site and give ourselves a little background on what a prisoner of war is, and an unlawful combatant. Like I was saying, Joe Lieberman was talking about a prisoner of war, but they've redefined that term. And let's look at this. It says, an unlawful combatant or unprivileged combatant is a civilian who directly engages in armed conflict in violation of international humanitarian law and may be detained or prosecuted under the domestic law of the detaining state for such action. And the biggest point here is I'm going to show you is how it applies to the Geneva Convention, and then the War Powers Act that was passed September 2001 after the 9/11 attacks, which were supposedly from outside the country. So they, that's how it goes. But going here, it says the Geneva Conventions apply in wars between two or more states. Article 5 of the GC3 states that the status of a detainee may be determined by a competent tribunal. Until such time, he is to be treated as a prisoner of war. After a competent tribunal has determined his status, the detaining power may choose to accord the detained unlawful combatant the rights and privileges of a prisoner of war as described in the Third Geneva Convention, but is not required to do so. And then it goes on to say an unlawful combatant who is not a national of a neutral state and who is not a national of a co-belligerent state retains rights and privileges under the Fourth Geneva Convention, so that he must be treated with humanity, and in case of trial shall not be deprived of the rights of fair and regular trial. And of course it says the phrase unlawful combatant does not appear in the Third Geneva Convention. And then you move down here and it says, in the United States, the Military Commissions Act of 2006 codified the legal definition of this term and invested the United States President with broad discretion to determine whether a person may be designated an unlawful enemy combatant under United States law. And moving down, it says combatants who do not qualify for POW status. A combatant who does not qualify for POW status can, under the provisions of the Geneva Conventions, expect to be treated humanely, and before he is punished can expect to get a trial in a regularly constituted court. The last time the American and British unlawful combatants were executed after a regularly constituted court was the Luanda trial as mercenaries. And so that's kind of the issue right now, is when reading that again over a second time, Lieberman is correct by referring to him as a prisoner of war. But if he's going to, but the thing here is whether they want to get him in a military tribunal, and they want to use this right here, the Presidential Military Order, the War Powers Resolution. And if they do that, then they can just hold them and detain them for however long that they want. And of course, if they would have used this HIG, this high value interrogation group that they're trying to promote, they just torture the hell out of them until they basically confess to everything, right? So you have this article from January 20th that I'm going back on that was, was posted on Yahoo. This is titled, Intel Chief Concedes Errors in Christmas Bomb Case. And it says, National Intelligence Director Dennis Blair raised new questions Wednesday before a Senate panel about how well prepared the administration is to respond on short notice to domestic terrorist acts. Blair suggested the high-value detainee interrogation group, also known as HIG, should have questioned the Nigerian airline bomb incident suspect before any decisions were made on whether to place him in a civilian court system. And if you go down here, it says, but the elite interrogation unit cited by Blair was designed by the Obama administration last year to deal with suspects captured abroad, and it is not operational yet, FBI Director Robert Mueller said. And it was the FBI and the U.S. A U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement agent that spoke with him, that spoke with Muttalib. And the thing about it is, it says the Higg unit, which brings together experienced interrogators from across the intelligence agencies, is also led by the FBI, the same agency that questioned Abdul Muttalib in the hours after he was taken into custody on a landed Detroit-bound airliner. So he was already kind of questioned by the Higg. It just wasn't the CIA, the National Security Agency. It wasn't all those kind of black, intelligence groups. And it says several hours after Blair spoke in his office, posted a brief note on his website saying his remarks had been misconstrued. Quote, the FBI interrogated Abdul Muttalib when they took him into custody, the statement said. They received important intelligence at the time, drawing on the FBI's expertise in interrogation that will be available in the Higg. Once more, it's fully operational. Abdul Muttalib spoke for many hours to FBI questionnaires, telling them he had been trained and equipped by al-Qaeda operatives in Yemen. And it is just my belief that this Abdul Muttalib was a patsy, and that the people that he was going to be interrogated were the very people that pretty much set him up as a patsy, the intelligence agencies, the CIA. So, of course, when he gets picked up, and he was drugged up. He was kind of out of it when he boarded that plane. And, you never know what this guy, what was really going on, who he was speaking with before. And whatever it was, he was told to say exactly that. Oh, al-Qaeda, al-Qaeda, al-Qaeda. Which is basically a computer program that was created by the CIA. And it says al-Qaeda, literally the database, was originally the computer file of the thousands of mujahideen who were recruited and trained with help from the CIA to defeat the Russians. Because it says, everybody knows this is mainline history. Bin Laden was, though, a product of a monumental miscalculation by the Western security agencies. Throughout the 80s, he was armed by the CIA and funded by Saudis to wage jihad against the Russian occupation of Afghanistan. They were made to bring down communism economically, because the New World Order faction created communism, and they created socialism, they created fascism, and they liked fascism. That's what they went with, and so they try to do whatever they can to bring down communism, and they did that by draining them financially and militarily, and that's what they're doing to us here in the United States. But that's besides the point. I'm just trying to make this point right here. As far as al-Qaeda, it's a computer database. Yeah, and it says here it's some critics assert the government should have at least considered whether to delay placing the Nigerian in the civilian court system in order to press him for any useful intelligence before he gained the legal protections of a lawyer. And me, personally, my belief is that I don't really buy into any of this crap. I think that most of our freedoms and liberties were lost because of 9/11. I think 9/11 is a turning point in our history, and everything goes back to that date. Because it wasn't just, they didn't just kill 3,000 of their own people, intelligence agencies and that. They did it for a reason, and they got a lot from it, and they got to bypass all kinds of protocols and laws. And so they just sweep up these guys that had brown skin. They throw them out in Guantanamo Bay so they can legally torture them and treat them inhumanely. And then have everybody watch that and say, oh, okay, well, yeah, okay, this is what we got to do to keep us safe. And so here we are now, 8 years later. Now they're talking about a Higg, high-value intelligence group. And, of course, they don't want you to have any kind of lawyer or any kind of thing like that. You just be treated as a prisoner of war. It says, it's crystal clear to me that somebody in the Department of Justice prematurely decided they should treat this as a normal criminal case, Sessions, a Republican from Alabama, said after the hearing. Obviously, no care and time was spent on this one. It was just boom, and decision was made quickly, way too quickly in my view. Blair said the decision to file criminal charges against the suspect in federal court was made by the FBI agent in charge on the scene, consulting with his headquarters and the Department of Justice. It seemed logical to the people there, but it could have been taken using the Higg format at a higher level, Blair said.